morning. My name is Tracy Cook, and this is a Victim to Victory podcast series. This series gives a voice to those that have overcome challenges in all forms, that have dared greatly to share their real stories. Amazing humans that have seen hope and risen above those adversities to become victorious, that go on to support and inspire others to do the same. And today we're giving a voice to Genevieve Jones in Perth, Western Australia. And I want to share a little bit about Genevieve before I really want to share her story and her message and what she actually does and the impact and value she's making to communities all over. And Genevieve is a survivor of child sexual abuse, has a rich insight into trauma-related issues affecting children and adults. Her extensive experience working in child protection, drug and alcohol counselling, and the mental health sector, together with her personal experience, places her in a very unique position to empower children, parents, and educators to adopt the protective behaviours philosophy. I'm very interested in hearing more about that. Genevieve has spent extended periods working in remote Indigenous communities alongside several deployments with WA Police, teaching protective behaviours to children, youth, teachers, parents, and community groups. Now, Genevieve very much believes that education is the most powerful tool to prevent child sexual abuse, 100%. And Genevieve has a very strong belief in building the knowledge and the capacity of teachers to integrate the protective behaviours program into their curriculum. She has a diploma in human services, a Bachelor of Social Science degree, and as a survivor of child sexual abuse, she has a rich insight into trauma-related issues affecting adults and children. Wow, what an amazing human. Now, Genevieve is an experienced senior protective behaviours facilitator and trauma educator, and currently works with the WA Child Safety Services team alongside other passionate advocates for child safety. What an amazing human. Thank you very much for agreeing to be part of the Victim to Victory podcast series, Genevieve. Welcome.
Thank you, Tracy, and it's a pleasure to be able to tell my story and promote the amazing work that Protective Behaviours and WA Child Safety Services does. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, that is an amazing bio. You're doing some absolutely wonderful, impactful things amongst the communities. Can you share a little bit about where your story kind of starts and take us on that journey to kind of bring us up to what you're doing now?
Sure. Okay. So, well, I guess a lot of my passion comes from my experience of sexual abuse when I was very young. So, bit of a background, my parents separated when I was very young, probably about 14 months. Not long after, Mum had moved in with a new boyfriend. We were highly vulnerable, which is often the case with child sex abuse victims and families, is they magnetise towards vulnerability. And that was certainly the case for my family and myself. So what had happened was, very soon after we started living with him, he began to abuse us all in very different ways. There were 4 children in the family. Mum herself had a history of sexual abuse and trauma herself, and also was struggling with various mental health issues. And in hindsight, I'd say from the trauma she had as a child. So it's kind of that intergenerational trauma that's so common and that we see over and over again. So she really kind of, I suppose, didn't have the capacity to keep us safe. And again, this kind of character is what often child sex offenders gravitate towards. So we moved into his house, and I now call that the House of Horrors. So look, the term psychopath is bandied around a lot, but this man was a true psychopath. So he was very sick, and he did a lot of torturous and sick things to all of us. I was the one that copped probably the brunt of the sexual abuse. So when I was nearly 4, he would come into my bedroom at night. He would tell me that if I was wearing knickers to bed, I was dirty and God would want to punish me and he'd have to punish me. So this was the kind of beginning of it all. And typically he would take me into the bathroom, into the shower, and a lot of the sexual abuse happened in the shower. He was a very sick man. He had a speaker above the shower. I don't know how he had installed it. I was very little, but he used to pretend he was God, and the speaker would blare out certain sins that I'd done for wearing knickers to bed. So then the sexual abuse would happen in the shower, and then later I'd find myself in a little ball or wet in my bedroom. So that was to be kind of my bedtime routine, unfortunately, for the next probably about 4 or so years. Wow. So amidst the sexual abuse, there was a lot of violence. There was a lot of domestic violence. He was bashing my mother up on a very regular basis, torturing my other siblings. So it really was the house of horrors.
It definitely sounds like the house of horrors, and as you said, that is a definite psychopath. And thank you very much for sharing that story as well. I mean, I'm guessing you've shared this many times, but each time you tell it, it's never going to get any easier. So I really appreciate you sharing with that, because I know how many people can connect with that kind of thing as well. And where did you go from there, Genevieve? Where does your story take you from there?
Oh, wow. So the whole time it was happening, I thought it was normal, as we know children often do, because that was my world. That was my reality. And I thought it was kind of playing out in every house. I thought that was, a normal bedtime routine. So I'd say from that moment on, probably the first incident, I was, I suppose you'd say, in shock. Like, I was very disassociated. I had the PTSD, of course, not knowing at the time. But so I was living with all these symptoms of complex PTSD, but not knowing, in a permanent state of kind of flight, fight, freeze, kind of oscillating between the three. And then the gold in the story was when I was year 2, I latched myself to this beautiful girl in my class, and I kind of fostered myself out to her family. And I could not be more grateful for that family. They treated me like a daughter, and I was just treated, exactly like they were treating all their other children, full of love. And that gave me that sense of safety that I was certainly lacking in my home. However, I was still very much having to spend a lot of time at the family home as well. Mum eventually left him, and we moved away, but then she got back together with him. And then after that point, she magnetized to more very violent men. And we were exposed to a lot of violence with all her, stream of ongoing boyfriends. So really, it was just basically living from crisis to crisis as a child. Yeah.
Was she aware of this abuse going on, or was she in denial? Or because she had, like you said, the trauma from her childhood, probably not the coping mechanisms to actually see that. Was she aware? Were you telling adults, or you said that you actually thought that it was normal? And then how grateful you were for this other family. So when you're spending time with this other family, you've realized that this isn't kind of normal. So was your mother aware of this, or in denial, or coping with too many things of her own and everything at the same time?
Yeah, I actually think it's a bit of everything, Tracy. Like, she was under a lot of stress, I guess. She had 4 children. She was a single mother. She had quite a few diagnoses in her time. I mean, I was constantly visiting her in psychiatric wards, constant suicide attempts. So, it was very frequent that we would be going to hospital to visit her after she tried to kill herself. She would say things like, you're so much better off without me. And then I took a protective role on for my mother. So then, we all became almost like the parents in the house. But Mum, definitely quite unconscious to it all. had never really stopped to deal with her trauma. And, what's that saying? What you don't repair, you repeat. And that was very much what happened. And so mum was just very unaware, and I don't think had the strength to confront it. And there was just so much, the legacy of her trauma has been so huge now, just layer upon layer, that I think I believe that she probably will never go there. So unfortunately, she didn't have the strength or the capacity to break that cycle. Yeah.
And with your you've got brothers and sisters or sisters?
So, Tracy, I have 2 older sisters, and I had a brother, and he died about 13 years ago. Yeah, and he was, it was tragic, of course, but he was also very much abused by the same psychopath who abused me, but also his role in the family, almost because being kind of like the man in the house, he would always try to protect mum from these men. So his life was just a constant exposure to, again, so much violence, so much trauma, instability, crisis, and he took the drug route, as many people do in these situations. And he died on his motorbike, but he was the police were amazed that he managed to wrap one leg around that motorbike, because he was on everything under the sun. He had turned to crime quite young. He was quite suicidal quite young, so he was just really on that trajectory. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sad. Sorry for your loss there for your brother.
Yeah.
That's, this is the fallout, and this is why the education is so important to get into our schools, to let these kids and these families, look at me, I'm tearing up, and just get that education and those resources out there, and let them know, hey, this isn't normal, it's not you, it's okay to get help, it's okay to know that it's okay to not be okay. You need to go and tell somebody and get help, and just bring that awareness into schools and communities is just so impactful. And I can't wait for you to share what you're doing with different programs moving forward as well.
Yes, definitely. And I think particularly with men, I mean, we know that child sex abuse and trauma affects everyone, but and they say 1 in 5, 1 in 7 boys, 1 in 4 girls, but in actual fact, boys are much less likely to disclose because of the whole, cloak of masculinity and the very negative messages they're getting about, what it is to be a man, which is synonymous with not talking about feelings or not feeling. So, they still kind of get the message it's weak to speak. And there can be there's so much room to be able to re-educate on those very, very toxic messages of masculinity to boys. Yeah.
And do you think that's kind of changing? Because I still see a lot of that out in the communities and people I speak to. There's still you're a boy, toughen up, and boys don't cry. And do you think there is a shift changing?
I think we've definitely made steps forward, like with all the Are You OK and all those campaigns, and I think there is a lot more education out there now about, the importance of emotional intelligence and identifying feelings and talking about them for boys. But I still see it a lot, like a boy that I worked with not so long ago who had been sexually abused by his mother's partner, I think, as well. I think he was about 13, he was in high school when I was delivering the Protective Behaviours program. And he told me he couldn't tell anyone because his father told him it was weak to speak. And I put my hand on my heart and I said, no. I said, it's brave to talk. So that's the kind of messages that the Protective Behaviours program has, that, it's the greatest strength of anyone to be able to talk about. It's a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. So, I definitely think it's still out there. We've got a long way to go, but with programs like the Protective Behaviours program that focuses on feelings and the importance of being able to identify and talk about them, and it's a healthy thing to do, I think we've also definitely heading in the right direction. Yeah.
That's great. Could you tell us a little bit about, we've touched on it a little bit about the program,
Sure.
And we'll obviously share your links, how people can get in contact with you as well, if they want education in any community-based organisations or schools or anything like that. So we will definitely share your links out on that, because that's so important. But tell us just a little bit about how the program's structured, and if you don't mind sharing a little bit of information, if you know, they're kind of in a vulnerable situation, how this program's going to help them as well.
Sure. Yeah. So the amazing thing is, I mean, sexual abuse, the whole topic has been so taboo and swept under the carpet up until, you know, fairly recently, I think. And I think the biggest step we've made is the fact that now this protective behaviours program, which essentially it's a personal safety program. So it deals with children having the skills and strategies to know what to do in all types of unsafe situations, to be able to identify them, to be able to articulate what's going on and have strategies to deal with them. But we do focus specifically on child sexual abuse. So although it's a personal safety program, there is an emphasis on preventative child sexual abuse, because we know the statistics are so huge. So basically what it is, it's now in the curriculum. So this is the really important things that we tell parents, is from kindergarten right through to year 12, all teachers should be teaching the protective behaviours program. So, and that's just fundamental, because we know that research says 3 to 8 years old is probably the most likely time for child sexual abuse to happen, because of the vulnerability of that age group. And so if that education's not done by, you know, that's year 2 really, is 8 years old. So often that's, you know, it's happened and there's been no prevention. So really we want that to be targeted at kindergarten. So from kinder to year 12, it's in the curriculum. And basically what the protective behaviours program is, it's a personal safety program, but it's about empowering children with skills and knowledge and information to keep themselves safe from all types of situations. So it's 10 topics, and how I often describe it when we talk about the sexual abuse prevention component is we talk about the grooming of sexual abuse, and the proper name is the entrapment process. But what we know with sexual offenders is there's a lot of things in common that they all do, and it's very premeditated, it's very calculated. And we have all the research. So we know, for instance, an example would be, we know one of the biggest things they do is they make sure that child is a secret keeper, because the motivation for the child sex abuse is, one, to sexually abuse them for a whole list of different reasons, and also to get that child to keep it a secret. So, for instance, one of the topics is secrets. So we have safe secrets and unsafe secrets. And we educate children that it's okay to keep like surprises and their safe secrets for a little while, and eventually everyone will know no one's getting hurt, no one's touching their private parts. There's no ever secrets about touching private parts. But with the unsafe secrets, we never need to keep an unsafe secret from our safety network people. So another topic is every child choosing 5 safe adults. We often call it a helping hand or a network. And we never keep secrets from our safety network people. And if this person doesn't believe us, we keep on trying until someone listens to us, believes us, and the unsafe feeling stops. So the topics in it are things like having a safety network, knowing that we never ever need to keep secrets, knowing that all feelings are okay. That's another topic. And we basically make sure that every single child we work with has the strategies to know what to do if someone breaks the body rules. So we teach them what the body rules are. We teach them about what private means, and the difference between private and public, and what to do if someone breaks those rules. So every single topic in the program is really there to combat that grooming process. Because what we know, and from my situation, Tracy, I had no idea what was going on was wrong. I'd never heard someone tell me the rules of private parts. And how can someone tell when they don't know what the rules are? So to me, I feel like that is like the seatbelt for safety, for body safety, really, is teaching children the correct names. No shame around calling a vulva, a vagina, a penis, scrotum, anus, testicles. So we don't want shame around that. They're not rude. They're just private. And children have a right to know how to keep themselves safe. And without knowing and being empowered with this knowledge on body safety and secrets and feelings, then really that increases their risks of being victims to child sexual abuse. So they have the right to have this knowledge. So those topics in the program are, like I kind of trying to get to, is there to combat that grooming process. Yeah, and the more I deliver it, Tracy, the more I feel so strongly that it's like a suicide prevention program. It's
100%.
got the feelings, 100%, and it is so effective. And although our role as educators is not to get disclosures, and we're not there to investigate at all, that's the job of the police. It's amazing when you talk about these subjects, and if children haven't, how many disclosures will actually come up because someone is just given this child an opportunity to say perhaps that they've been given an unsafe touch. So, you know, if we don't talk about it, they won't talk about it. So it's really about just getting those conversations in place, you know, age appropriate, developmentally appropriate, but we need to be having those conversations from 3 years old. Yeah. I think I kind of went everywhere in that one, but
that's right. And especially in schools, I mean, like you said, they could be growing up in homes where they don't have those conversations, or they don't have those openness, or, you know, the word penis is a word we don't say, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And like you said, they've got every single right to know the proper names of things, what the appropriate use, you know, and the safe zones are, and to even have that helping hand, like you said, where they can actually go and they just keep going and knowing it's okay to keep going, because they don't even know that they can go to a person. They don't even know that's an option. That's and just developmentally, they wouldn't know, because they would probably think if it's happening in the home that this is normal, then I'm going to school and I'm being educated that this isn't. Hey, like you said, this is a suicide awareness program as well, a suicide prevention program. You know,
it really is, Tracy. And and the whole because I told my mum when I was about 16, and worst case scenario was my story, and she said, "Oh, don't be so stupid." He was impotent, and what else did she say? And then she said, "It was 20 years ago. Get over it." So I was really, really shut down and denied that validation. And then I went on a path of numbing myself with, you know, drugs and alcohol, and mainly alcohol, to be honest. And so that was almost as traumatic. Well, it was a trauma. I'm not going to compare the two, but it was another trauma of not being believed by that very person who was meant to protect me. And the statistics tell us now that it takes 3 attempts for a child on average before they're believed. So that whole thing of the network hand and the persistence topic is, if you're not believed, you keep on trying and tell until someone believes you. And now the great thing is, when we do the network hand, we always give them the kids' helpline number. And so I can say to them, or the trainers can say, I can 100% guarantee you that there's someone on this hand, and we put the phone number of the kids' helpline in the hand, that will believe you, listen to you, and help you do something to get you safe. So that's the great thing, is now that, you know, we've got amazing support lines like Kids Helpline, that they get a lot of disclosures. So that keep on telling is another really important topic. So because we know a child's going to have to pluck that courage up. And from a lot of stories I heard at the drug and alcohol rehabilitation place I was working, I think I've used a statistic. I think it was I had 12 clients that I was counselling for drugs and alcohol kind of rehab. And by the first caseload of my clients, 9 of them had disclosed child sexual abuse. And most of them had tried to tell and they weren't believed. So then that kind of places them right on that addiction trajectory of trying to numb out and forget. So so that's why it's just so important to get this program, going in the household, in the schools, in the community, with all children from a very young age. Yeah,
and
very
especially
impactful.
being as young as kindergarten and 3-year-olds, they do understand a lot more than what we give them credit for as well. 100%. They're so open to and process things just so much more effectively than we give them credit for, don't they?
It's so true. And when I'm in there with the kindy class, and they're so much fun. And look, the program is so much fun, Tracy. It's songs, it's dances, it's puppet shows, it's amazing books. The kids absolutely love it. And really, if you can teach the children the names and talking about private parts, they don't have any shame around it. It's us, it's the adults that can't say it. The children are, the shame hasn't developed at that age when it comes to things like that, the embarrassment. And they're a lot easier to teach than the adults who, can't put their hand up and sat in a workshop because they weren't educated. No blame here, but just the fact that they weren't educated. So, so they absolutely love the program. And, it's just couldn't be more worthwhile.
And I really believe too, it doesn't matter when you said it takes 3 times to tell somebody before you believe.
An average.
I can completely identify. It took me 45 years to tell my parents, and all I got was, that was so long ago, you're stupid, it didn't happen, you're delusional. 45 years later, and it's not, and with trauma and that fallout kind of PTSD, I don't know whether you agree, sometimes you kind of you put up with it and it's there, but you ignore it. But when you actually acknowledge it and you're awake and you tell, you go back and have a look over the rest of your life, you can see all those things on your timeline that related back to that childhood trauma trigger over and over and over. The alcohol abuse, the domestic violence relationships, the self-limiting beliefs, the suicide attempts, you can see, but that's on them, not you. But it still hurts. And like you said, it's kind of like a trauma on top of another trauma as well.
It really is. It really is. And I think it's the shame, isn't it? Because I know that toxic shame, because myself, speaking from my experience and also the hundreds of children I've worked with, we have disclosed and been sexually abused. There's not one of them that doesn't, to some extent, feel that shame and that guilt, and carrying that around, that's what throws you on the trajectory of addiction and all those behaviors that are completely self-sabotaging and destructive, because often that's internalized, isn't it? Like, I'm dirty, I'm bad, it was my fault, something's wrong with me, I'm unlovable. So those messages to carry around for all those years is, that's the trajectory that we go on, is that suicide path, that drugs and alcohol, addiction of some form, whether it's food, alcohol, sex. And it's really interesting because the research shows that a child who's been sexually abused, the average time it will take to disclose, take a guess, Tracy. It's not far from your number you just gave me.
10 to 20 years?
A little bit up, a little bit closer towards your number.
Oh, wow. So 30 or 40 years?
Yeah, 33 years is the average time a child will keep that child sexual abuse a secret. And that's to do with that grooming process, the threats and the shame and the manipulation, and they'll say things like, if you tell anyone, I'm going to kill your mum and your sister.
Yeah,
and they're
totally.
Incubated in terror. You're incubated in terror, and you believe this as a child. So you are living in that reality of, if you say anything, this is going to happen. And so when a child does disclose, it's like, it is so important to believe them, because 99% of the time a child discloses, it is 100% true. So the fact that this non-believing goes on, that's why we really need to educate any professional or parent that works with children. The cardinal rule is always believe the child. Yeah. Because like you say, it's trauma 100%. On trauma.
Yeah, 100%. I know even when I disclosed to my parents, which are quite elderly now, and I'm in my 50s, and because, the Victim to Victory series is all about sharing your strengths through your vulnerabilities. And they were basically, when they found out about the podcast series, they were basically saying, how dare you, you've shamed us, we keep this in our four walls. And I said, well, no, I have the right, but even as an adult, to speak up to your parents. And you still feel that shame and another layer of trauma, but to speak up and say, well, no, actually, I have every right to speak my truth. And if you want to live like that, that is up to you. But I'm telling you, this is the truth. And I've got every right to speak my truth in whichever way that I see is going to help others and help myself to heal. And, you know, at some point, I'm guessing a lot of adults that have gone through childhood trauma, if you can shed some light on this from your experience, when they actually go into adulthood and they tell their parents, like I know many people that I've spoken to as a result of this series, and then you're still not believed.
So, it's so much denial, and there's so many reasons, isn't there, that people just don't want to go there. And again, it's that family shame. It's like you don't bring shame onto the family. And that's been such an ingrained message, hasn't it? Protecting that shame from the family. And, you know, it's just, it affects, no one's immune to it, are they? No matter what postcode, colour skin, type of family. You know, I've worked with children who have both parents as doctors, lawyers, whatever. It just, there's no one's immune to it. Like, and it happens every 2 hours a child is sexually abused, you know, and it's, and another statistic is every, I think, it's something like that. I think it might be every 4 hours a male in Australia commits suicide. Wow. And we know from the Beyond Blue statistics, Tracy, that they obviously don't have statistics from people who have suicided, but the ones that did, is one of the biggest things was they felt like they couldn't talk to anyone about their feelings and what was going on for them. And so again, it comes back to that, so important for people to be able to know that they can talk to someone.
Oh, so 100%.
Yeah, it's lifelong. Yeah, it's a lifelong trauma path.
Definitely. And I have a friend in the States that does a lot of suicide prevention and awareness. And, you know, the statistic she shared in the States as well is about on par with Australia, as you'd probably know. And I think, you know, we all have to
say that.
Really focus on the guys, on the fellas, you know, because things are changing. Time. The world is changing, and it's okay if your little boy is crying. It's okay if, you know, they hurt themselves and they want their mummy. It's totally okay for them to say, I feel scared, you know. And it's teaching the adults and that breaking that generational cycle, you know, to say it's really okay to cry. It's really okay to tell your feelings. It's really okay to feel scared or to not want to do something, and then the adults be educated enough to be conscious of seeing the signs as well, right? It's educating the adults to read the signs as well. So as a result of the program, do you find that a lot of adults are becoming more aware as well of what signs to actually see?
Definitely, I really do. And I think, again, it's a generational thing, isn't it? Because, you know, that those messages have been so ingrained, and it's only now that we're trying to rewrite the scripts, if you like. And so even it's funny, I've got this best friend, and she's an amazing girl, and she has issues with emotional regulation, like probably most of us do. And so her kids can't really emotionally regulate because she can't. And it's that whole thing of most adults aren't really that good at emotional regulation, yet we expect children to have it. So it's that whole thing with feelings, isn't it? And it's like all those tools, all those kind of emotional intelligence tools are so fundamental. So the parent workshops that we do are brilliant, because most parents go, oh God, yeah, I flip my lid at the drop of a hat and go off, and they can't emotionally regulate, or they can't sit with their own feelings or be kind to themselves where they're having an uncomfortable feeling. So it's almost impossible for them to teach children. So I think it really needs to be that approach from, you know, the parents, the teachers, and the children as far as the program is going. And the interesting thing is, when I worked at the drug and alcohol rehab, I was basically teaching a lot of these people emotional intelligence, feelings, how to talk about it. It's okay to talk, because they hadn't had the skills, and then there they were, often addicts. So the correlation, I think, is just, it's so strong between addiction and trauma.
Well, it's all
and it's often
embedded
to do
into
with
that little
it's
ball,
all
isn't it?
embedded.
It's all totally entwined.
Yes.
Wow.
It is. You can't separate. It's like inextricably linked, isn't it? So that's why it's just, I can't reinforce just how much gold this program is, and to be in schools at that young age, it's a game changer. So it should be taught in the schools, Tracy, and some teachers and principals are doing a brilliant job, and they often get us to come out and do sessions with the classes, do professional developments with the teachers. Some haven't jumped on board as much, but so we basically feel like the most empowering thing we can do is to train teachers so that in their classroom they can deliver it every day. And it doesn't just have to be in their health and physical education component. They can weave these topics through just about all the curriculum. So there's opportunities for them to bring up topics in the Protected Behaviours program throughout the day. So this is really what we focus on, is training teachers, training parents, so that, at the end of the day, the children have more likelihood of being educated in the program. So we run a lot of workshops and deliver a lot of sessions to children from kindy to year 12. We have a lot of different programs now. And as you'd be aware, with the teenagers, we call them screenagers. So a lot of the stuff we do with their program, it is protected behaviours, but a lot of it is cyber safety, pornography, because we know now that the rates of child sexual abuse are going through the roof, and child-to-child sexual abuse is probably about 40 to 60% of all sexual abuse is child on child now because of pornography. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So a lot of the programs we do is now cyber safety, healthy relationships, because we know that a main bulk of the offending is coming from young people, and they are watching pornography, thinking what they see, which is commonly quite violent and abusive, often called rape training for boys. 88% of the scenes are violence towards the woman. The woman's got a smile on her face while would be in quite a lot of pain. So the boys are picking up these messages that this is what girls enjoy, this is healthy. And unfortunately, they're reenacting it. It's become their sex education, basically, pornography, and it's been extremely damaging. And so we tailor the programs to where the need is, basically. And with high schools, it's definitely on that pornography and the cyber safety stuff. Yeah,
That's so important.
It's so important, and it's just, it's so prevalent. It's so prevalent. Every day I'm hearing so many stories about, child on child sexual abuse. It's just, it's prevalent more than people realise.
Well, that's been really enlightening for me this morning, because I didn't actually realise, that it kind of goes on, and I'm totally open and aware and always looking for signs of what's going on out there. And I'm very, very, very lucky that I've got a 14-year-old that comes and tells me everything. And
yes.
says, Mum, look at this.
So important.
And
yes.
And she's, and we talk about it, and we say, oh, how did that make you feel? And what are you going to do?
Yeah,
and
great.
give her the tools to be able to action something herself. That resilience to action something herself, and it's okay to feel shocked and alarmed and disgusted. Now, what are we going to do about that? So that's how we handle it.
Yes.
And with the child and child statistics, that just blew me away. I didn't actually realize it was that high.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's huge. That's massive. And that's why the education is so important, because young boys are getting on the sex offender register because they don't understand about sending nudes, receiving them. It's against the law. So things like that also is, they need the education, and they have the right to have it, because they don't know that often what they're seeing in pornography is violent, is considered abuse, and the girl looks like she's enjoying it. So they are naively acting it out and then getting themselves into a really horrible situation. So it's, the education for the boys and girls is so crucial, crucial. Particularly around that pornography stuff, because average age of of exposure is about 8 years now, I believe, for pornography, and it's it's hardcore pornography. It's not what it used to be like. So
I know the things
educating
that come
children
up on my
before
phone.
they see it. I know, right? And so what we say is it's not a matter of if your child's going to see pornography, it's a matter of when, and it will be around 8 years old. That's the average age. So we need to educate the children to know what to do when they see it. We don't want to shame them, we don't want to punish them, and we don't take their device off them because then they'll never tell you. But we need to give them strategies of what to do, because it can be traumatizing for them. So and they might find it curious or different reactions, but we need to educate them before they see it. Yeah, so there's the education component is just really, really imperative.
Yeah. And I think all those messages as well, I think a lot of those stats would really set some light bulbs off in our audience today, because I think a lot of people with what you've just shared wouldn't be completely open or aware, or maybe in denial, or not living realistic expectations with what's actually happening in their house and the communities. So as parents, we need to open up, and we need to not punish them if they come and tell us things, and we need to be able to really listen with those big open ears and really take on where they are now, because you know what, we didn't have mobile phones and the internet and online when we're at school, so it's new territory for us as parents as well.
It really is. It really is. And on that topic as well, Tracy, I think with the parent workshops, what's so important is to dispel kind of the myths around child sexual abuse. So, the fact that, 90% of the time that child sexual abuse happens is from someone the child knows, trusts. 30% of the time it's in the family, and often someone they love. So only 10% is that stranger danger, which is all I was ever taught in primary school. So we really need to take that focus off the fact that 90% of the time it's someone they know and is in their close little circle of, family, close friends. So there's a lot of myths that we go through in the parent workshops of knowing where the real risks lie. And again, it's often child on child that's happening, and often within the close family and friends of their group. So so those having that awareness is really important.
Well, I really hope a lot of people, especially in Perth, will connect with you, find out more about your workshops, seeing how they can get maybe their schools or their community organisations, their churches, whatever it is, on board with those as well. We'll definitely be sharing your information out with everybody to connect with you. I really appreciate all of the input and for you sharing your own story as well. And I know that it's just going to help so many people, and so many people will probably be awoken to a lot of this today. So that is essential stuff that we can get out into the communities. I really appreciate you, Genevieve. What kind of message would you like to leave our audience on today?
Oh, see, I'm used to kind of leaving messages for the young children I work with, but as we know, the statistics are 1 in 5, or if not more, for the whole population. So I suppose, when I look at my kind of healing journey, which will be a lifelong process, I think the most important thing is to be able to just de-shame, get rid of that toxic shame, to know it doesn't belong to you, to make sure you get yourself a good support network. And there are so many amazing support networks out there, and it's just to talk and tell someone. And I think that is really, really a crucial either first step or a step to keep on doing, to make sure that you're not living with that horrible toxic shame that comes with the crime.
Definitely. And breaking that generational cycle so that everyone can be the best version of themselves. Leaving that legacy for generations of just speaking from your heart with love, is just something that we can pass down for generations to come. So I so really appreciate that. Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Tracy.
You're welcome. And you can find our podcast on YouTube and the Facebook group, A Victim to Victory podcast series. If you got value from today, which I know you have, Genevieve, please connect with her. We will share her links out, get this message out into the communities. It is so impactful, and it's going to literally change and save lives. And I'd like to leave you with a message of step into your story, figure out who you are, and do it on purpose. Bye for now. Thanks.